For the first time in Honkai Star Rail history, Hoyo has revealed that players will be able to select a free limited banner 5-star to add to their account. Obviously from a limited selection though. Still, this is by far one of the most exciting things Honkai Star Rail has done, and it of course means that players have quite the important decision to make in regards to which character they want to select as their free limited 5-star. The choices for the free limited 5-stars are between Jing Yuan, Kafka, Heng Imbibitor Lunae, Jingliu, Sparkle, Acheron, and Aventurine. So a healthy sprinkling of fan favorite characters from both the 1.x days as well as the Penacony patches. But as popular as these characters may be, there is undoubtedly a few of them that stand out as being stronger in the modern day meta. So let's talk about the individual value each of these characters and their eidolons could add to your account, and narrow down who you should pick for your free 5-star selector. But first, a word from the sponsor of today's video. LD Shop is a safe and reliable top-up site that allows you to buy currency across multiple different games, including Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, among other games. They offer prices at a discount, from anywhere up to 13% to 25% cheaper than topping up in-game. Not only are the prices cheaper, but they make topping up completely effortless. All you need is your server and game ID, and you're good to go. No hassle at all, and no personal information required whatsoever. After purchase, you can see that the Jades are sent to my account within 5 minutes. There are no downsides to using LD Shop for your purchases, as the prices on LD Shop are strictly better than the prices in-game. But the upsides don't stop there. Users who register using my link in the description below will get an exclusive 15% and 5% coupon, which can save you up to $50. Additionally, if you spend $80 in total, you can earn an express supply pass for completely free. If you want to top up at discounted prices with no downsides, using a website and method that has been approved as safe by multiple large content creators in the space, then click the link in the description below to head over to LD Shop and start saving money on your gacha game top-ups right away. Let's start things off with our general, Mr. Jing Yuan himself. Listen, I'm a big fan of Jing Yuan. He was my first ever limited 5-star since I skipped Zila at the beginning of the game, and he served me well, especially when he got a slight resurgence in the meta with Sunday's release. He's a really cool character, and the animation of Lightning Lord is still one of my favorites in the entire game. With all that said, I must be blunt. There should never be any reason to select Jing Yuan as your free 5-star unless you just really love him and want to be able to run around in the overworld with him on your account. Jing Yuan unfortunately has an outdated kit with outdated numbers. That isn't to say he can't still clear endgame content, but doing so requires very good investment into both himself and his supports. And honestly, further investment into Jing Yuan himself doesn't even help him that much, because Jing Yuan's eidolons are also very outdated and underwhelming. So selecting Jing Yuan eidolons also doesn't change that much for his overall value. Jing Yuan is in an awkward position where he's sort of just waiting for his Nova Flare buff alongside a few other characters. But we've recently gotten some suspicious rumors about the next round of Nova Flare buffs, and Jing Yuan doesn't seem to be included in those. So at the moment, there's just no world where I could in good faith recommend Jing Yuan to anybody. And speaking of characters awaiting a Nova Flare buff, let's talk about Heng Imbibitor Lunae next. Heng fans can't really complain too much about the love their boy has recently gotten in the meta, thanks to the recent addition of Heng Permancer Terai being such a powerful free sustain that everybody has access to. Heng PT has been a lifesaver for so many accounts, helping them survive and clear anomaly arbitration, whereas they previously would not have been able to. So hopefully it's a bit less of a sting in the chest when I say that Heng Imbibitor Lunae is also very hard to recommend selecting as your free 5-star. He had his glory days for sure, being one of the first big spikes in DPS when he first released, but those glory days are unfortunately long over. He's an outdated character with outdated damage numbers, and to add insult to injury, they're releasing a character with a very similar playstyle as him, but stronger, Sparksy. Now, that isn't to say Imbibitor Lunae doesn't have anything going for him. For starters, Dill famously has a very powerful E2. Granted, the strength of that E2 is also outdated by modern standards, mainly due to his baseline's kit damage numbers being outdated, but the E2 is still a big increase for him. And maybe more importantly, Dill's E2 is still very fun, especially in currency wars, where he's a lot more usable. Additionally, Sparkle is getting her Nova Flare buff, which is indirectly a buff to Dill, since Sparkle is his best teammate. And her Nova Flare specifically fixes some of her issues, where her buff uptime wasn't great with Imbibitor Lunae's E2. Therefore, if you already have Dill's E1 for some reason, and you're on the cusp of getting his E2, which I understand is a very specific scenario, but if that's the scenario you're in, then there is some value in selecting Imbibitor Lunae as your free 5-star. Granted, that value comes more from the fun factor that his E2 provides, and not necessarily because it's the best value for helping you clear endgame, but fun factor is a valid consideration, and Dill's E2 changes his playstyle enough that I felt the need to mention it. But overall, Heng would be right next to Jing Yuan on the bottom of the list in terms of who I would recommend you select. And we might as well round out the last of the High Cloud Quintet on the selector by talking about Jingliu next. Unlike Jing Yuan and Dan Heng, who are in the waiting room for their Nova Flare, Jingliu already got her Nova Flare, and unless Hoyo gives her a second one, her current power level is probably where she's going to stay for a while. Jingliu isn't a bad character by any means. She can still clear endgame content, especially endgame content that isn't Anomaly Arbitration, but she is definitely not a character I would recommend picking from the selector unless you just really love Amelie. I mean, Jingliu. Her early Eidolons are fine, nothing amazing, and nothing that changes her playstyle, like with Dill's E2. If you're looking to select a DPS from the selector, Jingliu isn't the character I would suggest, so it would definitely be much more of a favoritism thing if you want her. It's really unfortunate that 3 of our big Shenzhou DPS characters have reached a point where they can't really be recommended anymore. Not for newer players, or even for older players who already have them and might want to invest into them. Both their baseline power level and their vertical investment options just don't offer enough value. So even though these 3 are all very popular characters, they are unfortunately at the very bottom of the list for the free 5-star selector, where you would definitely only select them for reasons completely unrelated to meta. Finally, we reach the Penacony characters, and let's start by discussing the original pinnacle of Penacony DPS characters, Acheron. If you rewound time back to Acheron's release and told the community that Acheron would one day be given out for free, you would be looked at as a madman. Acheron was such a powerful unit for her time with unique team building, and even to this day, you'll find Acheron mains finding ways to make miracles happen. But the test of time has caused our resident emanator of nihility to start feeling the wear and tear of old age. Because in Honkai Star Rail, 1 year is already enough time for older units to start feeling the struggle of keeping up. If you're looking to select an E0 Acheron from the selector, just know that she is not going to keep up with modern DPS units by any stretch of the imagination. Granted, Acheron is still able to clear endgame content and is generally going to be able to do it better than the other 3 DPS units we covered before her, which is why she is still more recommendable compared to the Shenzhou trio. Even more so, Acheron is more flexible across the different endgame modes compared to the other 3 DPS units who all struggle in AoE content like Pure Fiction. Acheron also has the benefit of receiving a decent amount of new supports recently, with the release of Cypher as well as Silverwolf's Nova Flare, making vertical investment into Silverwolf very powerful for Acheron, especially if you have Silverwolf's E2. With enough investment, Acheron can still prove to be very powerful and can carry her own weight as one of the teams on your account if you're dedicated enough. And speaking of vertical investment in Eidolons, we of course have to mention Acheron's E2. Acheron is in a similar position as Dill, where her E2 is really strong. Granted, it's not as powerful as it used to be. You see, Acheron's kit incentivizes you to use her with 2 other Nihility units, but her E2 lowers that restriction to only require 1 other Nihility unit. The strength of this E2 used to be balanced by the fact that Harmony units were so much stronger than Nihility units back in the day. However, nowadays, that isn't always the case due to how powerful Cypher and Silverwolf can be for Acheron, meaning the value of Acheron's E2 in allowing her to slot in a Harmony unit over one of these 2 isn't as crazy of an increase as it used to be. Still, Acheron's E2 is powerful and offers her more flexibility, so if you're stuck at Acheron E1 and want to unlock the next power spike in potential for your Acheron, then selecting her E2 will help your Acheron keep up with clearing endgame. All in all, Acheron is a fine choice, especially if you're looking to vertically invest in her, since she can still clear content with enough investment, which is at least better than the other 3 DPS units on this list. But with all of the DPS units now covered, let's talk about the only sustain on the selector, Aventurine. Aventurine is in a weird position where his direct competition was recently given away for free, Dan Heng Permancer Terai. In most cases, Dan Heng PT is just going to be a superior version of Aventurine, with stronger shields and better buffing for your DPS. If you're a new player, the free Dan Heng PT is going to be free until the end of version 4.0, so you'll be able to get Dan Heng PT instead of Aventurine either way. Due to this, Aventurine's value definitely takes a heavy hit. Now, you do need multiple sustains for multiple different teams, assuming you don't have the DPS investment to clear content sustain this. Due to this, Aventurine technically still has some value, but from a pure meta perspective, you would much rather just wait for the next modern sustain unit to release, given how intense the sustain power creep has been from Hyacinth and Dan Heng PT. Until we get the next powerful sustain, I would generally recommend just making do with the free Dan Heng PT, as well as free 4-star sustains, instead of using the free 5-star selector on Aventurine. Yes, Aventurine is still going to be very comfortable at keeping you alive, and that is still valuable, but it's not valuable enough for me to recommend selecting Aventurine over the last 2 options that we're about to discuss. So, if you love Aventurine, or if you just really want a sustain to keep you alive because you don't want to rely on 4-star sustains until the next new sustain unit releases, then okay, Aventurine will be a very comfortable option. Otherwise, I would generally recommend holding off on selecting Aventurine. But speaking of the final 2, let's talk about the real star of the show. The real reason the selector even exists to begin with, Sparkle. Let's be honest, this isn't actually a free 5-star selector. I know it says you can select 1 free limited 5-star from a group of 7, but that's actually fake. Hoyo is lying to you. This is not a free 5-star selector. selector. This is a free Sparkle selector. Prior to Sparkle's Nova Flare, recommending her would have been a bit more sus because she was pretty underwhelming on a vast majority of teams where there were always better options. Even in her best in slot teams like Archer, she faced competition from Sunday. Now, this is Honkai support rail, and supports are generally still the safest characters to invest into when you're literally getting a free 5-star like this, but selecting Sparkle wouldn't have brought too much value to your account regardless. But oh, how things have changed now that Sparkle is getting her Nova Flare buff. Sparkle has essentially been reborn as one of the strongest damage amplifiers in the game, giving a total of 30% vulnerability, which is a very rare and coveted stat, alongside upwards of 90 to 100 crit damage, 45% attack with no quantum restriction anymore, as well as 10% free res pen, just because why not? And obviously, she does all of this while providing an action advance and practically unlimited skill points for the team. As if that wasn't enough, her quick energy rotation means that she's a very strong user of Dance Dance Dance, situationally making it even better than any 5-star light cones on her, meaning Sparkle has almost no reliance for 5-star light cones. Sparkle is genuinely such a powerhouse as a generalist buffer now, and in the teams that rely on her skill point generation, such as Archer or Sparksy, she shines even more. The fact that they're giving her away for free right after giving her such a powerful buff, and the fact that she's going to be featured so prominently in the story, really does make this free 5-star selector feel like it's flying neon-colored signs in the air, telling every player to pick up a free Sparkle. It's even crazier when you consider the fact that Archer was a free 5-star, and a powerhouse all on his own. Now his best in slot support is getting a massive buff, and also is being given away for free? Archer truly might just be the biggest winner out of the 4.0 patch. And since Archer was free, that means we are all the biggest winners. Except for the unfortunate few who weren't able to claim the free Archer in time, of course. My condolences. So, in summary, this free 5-star selector is a Sparkle selector in disguise. I would recommend almost everybody choose Sparkle as their free 5-star if they care about the meta in any way, especially since Sparkle's Eidolons are also very good. If you're going to ask if it's worth it to select Sparkle's E1, my answer is yes. Not necessarily because her E1 is crazy good, her E2 is actually her biggest Eidolon because it gives so much defense thread, but her E1 is still good enough that it outvalues most of the other characters on this list. It's not really a matter of Sparkle's E1 being super broken, even though it is good, but more so that the other characters you could select aren't good enough to justify picking them over Sparkle's decent E1, especially with how powerful Sparkle is now at a baseline. Of course, there is one exception to this, and that's the last character we have to talk about, Kafka. One of the oldest characters on this list, but I had to save her for last because Kafka is an exception. Unlike her fellow 1.x characters like Jing Yuan, Dill, and Jingliu, Kafka has only continued to age well, largely thanks to her Nova Flare, as well as the new teammates she has continued to get. The Black Swan Nova Flare might as well make Black Swan a new character. And in fact, I would wager that Black Swan's Nova Flare was partially made specifically with this free Kafka selector in mind, to offer players an avenue to build the newly revived DOT team. Kafka is a character that you should only select if you really want to play the DOT team. She has none of the flexibility of Sparkle, but that's okay because she is the backbone of the DOT archetype. If you're certain you want to invest into Heistlands and Black Swan to build the full DOT team, then Kafka is definitely the character you would want to select for your free 5-star. Basically, do you want to play DOT? Are you willing to invest in the other DOT characters? Yes? Then select Kafka. No? Then select Sparkle. The other characters on the selector are mostly cosmetic, and you only select them if your account is in a very specific situation where you can get a free Acheron E2 with the selector, or if you just really love one of the other characters and want to run around with them in the overworld. Kafka's E1 is also very good and is, once again, a very strong consideration, but only if you're looking to invest fully into the DOT team. Sparkle and Kafka are the main faces of the selector, and everyone else is a favoritism option. In the end, it's ultimately up to you and which teams you're most interested in playing, but in general, you can't go wrong with selecting Sparkle for either a free first copy or a free Sparkle Eidolon, whereas Kafka is for everybody who wants to play DOT. And these are the only two characters I would actually recommend for meta-related reasons. So, if you're looking for the best character to choose from the free 5-star selector for your account, definitely look towards Sparkle or Kafka, depending on whether you want to play DOT or if you want the more generalist hypercarry support. Otherwise, pick whichever character will make you happiest. Thank you so much for watching! If you found this video helpful or enjoyable at all, consider liking the video. It's super exciting that we're even getting a selector like this to begin with, and I really hope Hoyo does more of this in the future, even if it's largely filled with a lot of outdated characters. It's like a better version of Genshin's Chronicle Wish banners. For me personally, I'll definitely be picking up Sparkle's E1 for free. Comment down below which character you'll be picking from the free 5-star selector, and why you're picking them. I'd love to hear your reasonings. As always, there's plenty more videos in the works, and many things to cover with the influx of new characters coming in the next character beta right around the corner. So be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on my coverage of all things HSR related. Thank you once again for watching, and with all of that said, until next time!